Dad, don't go home tonight. Those were the words my 11-year-old Jake whispered at Austin Airport, and the moment everything in my life snapped into focus. Everything had been planned for 9:30 p.m., the exact minute Jake and I always walked through the front door. My name is Brian Robert. I'm 65 years old, and I've spent my life as an auto mechanic, fixing things that are broken. But never once did I think I'd have to fix my own marriage. What happened next didn't just save our lives. It exposed a betrayal far deeper than I ever imagined. For 2 years, I believed Stephanie was the perfect stepmother. Beautiful, organized, everything Jake and I needed. But in that airport terminal, with Jake showing me the recordings on his phone, I realized I'd been living with someone who wanted us gone for good. What I uncovered afterward didn't just unravel her plan. It proved that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones quietly plotting against you. I stayed calm. Over 40 years of fixing other people's problems does that to a man. But inside, my blood ran cold. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. This is the story of how my son's quiet warning became a life-saving revelation, and why I'll never doubt his words again. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. They were everywhere, hiding in plain sight like rust under fresh paint. Stephanie entered our lives exactly when we needed her most. Jake's biological mother, Sarah, had died in a car accident 3 years earlier, and I was struggling to keep everything together. Working 12-hour days at the shop, trying to be both father and mother, barely managing the basics of keeping an 11-year-old fed, clothed, and emotionally stable. When Stephanie walked into my auto repair shop that Tuesday morning in March 2022, she seemed like an answer to prayers I didn't know I was praying. Her BMW had a transmission problem, but instead of the usual impatience most luxury car owners showed, she was patient, understanding. She complimented my thoroughness, asked intelligent questions about the repair process. "You really care about getting things right," she said, watching me explain the diagnostic process. "That's rare these days." By the time her car was fixed, we'd talked for 2 hours. About Jake, about the challenges of single parenting, about building a life after loss. She listened with the kind of attention that made you feel heard, understood, valued. "I'd love to take you both to dinner sometime," she said as she signed the repair invoice, "if that's something you'd be interested in." I was interested, more than interested. The first red flag I ignored came during our third date. Jake had joined us for dinner at Chili's, and Stephanie was asking him detailed questions about his routine. What time did he get home from school? Did we have any family traditions? How predictable were our daily schedules? "I like to understand family dynamics," she explained when I mentioned her curiosity later. "If I'm going to be part of your lives, I want to fit in seamlessly." It sounded thoughtful, caring. I missed the calculated precision behind her questions. The second red flag appeared 6 months into our relationship. Stephanie suggested we move in together to test compatibility before making bigger commitments, but she wanted to handle all the household finances. "I have experience with investment planning," she said, sitting at my kitchen table with papers spread out like she was conducting a business meeting. "Let me take the stress of money management off your shoulders." She opened joint accounts, consolidated our resources, took over bill paying, insurance management, financial planning. Within 3 months, I barely knew what money was coming in or going out of our household accounts. "Trust is the foundation of any successful partnership," she'd say whenever I asked questions about specific charges or transfers. The third red flag should have ended everything. She started pushing for marriage with an urgency that felt more businesslike than romantic. "Jake needs stability," she'd argue. "Children thrive in secure family structures. The longer we wait, the more uncertainty affects his development." She wasn't wrong about Jake needing stability, but something about her approach felt transactional, like she was closing a deal rather than proposing a life together. But I was lonely, exhausted from 2 years of single parenting, desperate to give Jake the complete family structure he'd lost when Sarah died. So I ignored my instincts and proposed in December 2022. The wedding planning revealed more concerning patterns. Stephanie insisted on updating my life insurance policy as part of our financial optimization. She researched the best coverage options, found policies that offered maximum payouts for minimal monthly payments. We need to protect Jake's future, she explained, sliding insurance application papers across the table. If something happens to you, I want to make sure he's completely provided for. The new policy was for $1.8 million, triple my previous coverage. She also insisted we get a policy for Jake. Children's insurance is incredibly affordable, she said. $300,000 in coverage for less than $30 a month. It's basically free money if something terrible ever happens. I signed everything she put in front of me. Why wouldn't I? She was thinking about our family's security, planning for contingencies I was too overwhelmed to consider. What I didn't know was that Stephanie had been researching more than insurance policies. She'd been studying our routines, mapping our schedules, identifying the patterns that would make us predictable targets. While I was falling in love, she was planning our deaths. But Jake was watching everything with the careful attention that only children possess. By January 2024, Stephanie controlled every aspect of our financial lives, and I was completely vulnerable without knowing it. Our joint checking account contained my life savings, $53,000 accumulated over 37 years of auto repair work. The house deed, originally in my name only, now showed both our names as co-owners. Even Jake's college fund, money Sarah had left specifically for his education, was in accounts Stephanie could access as his legal stepmother. Family finances should be transparent and shared, she'd explained during one of her financial reorganization sessions. Separate accounts create unnecessary complications and trust issues. If I'd remained blind to her real agenda, Jake and I would have died that Tuesday evening at exactly 9:30 p.m. The plan was professionally elegant. Stephanie establishes an alibi by flying to Seattle for a business conference. While she's documenting her presence 3 states away through hotel check-ins and conference photos, Derek Patterson creates a gas leak in our home's main line. Jake and I follow our predictable Tuesday routine: dinner at Whataburger after his piano lesson, home by 9:25, garage door opener activated at 9:28, footsteps in the garage by 9:30. I reach for the light switch to illuminate our entrance into the house. The explosion would have been instantaneous and devastating. Tragic accident claims beloved auto mechanic and son, the local headlines would read. Aging home's gas line failure causes devastating explosion. Stephanie would return from Seattle as the grieving widow and stepmother, inheriting a financial windfall that exceeded $2.5 million. The life insurance payouts alone totaled $2.1 million, $1.8 million on my policy, $300,000 on Jake's. Add the house value at $420,000, my business equity of $160,000, and Sarah's remaining life insurance trust of $230,000, and Stephanie stood to collect enough money to disappear completely. But the financial calculation was secondary to what really mattered: Jake's future. He was 11 years old, bright, resilient, still processing the loss of his biological mother 3 years earlier. Sarah had made me promise during those final weeks in the hospital that I'd give Jake every opportunity to build a good life. "Make sure he knows he's loved," she'd whispered, her voice barely audible above the ventilator noise. "Make sure he feels safe. Make sure he knows that family means mid protection, not danger." Instead, I'd brought someone into his home who saw his existence as an obstacle to wealth, who calculated his death as a necessary business expense, who measured his young life against insurance payout schedules. If Stephanie's plan had succeeded, Jake would have died believing his stepmother loved him. He'd never have discovered that the woman who helped with homework was researching the most efficient ways to stage our accidental deaths, that the person who made his favorite pancakes on Saturday mornings was counting down the days until he'd be gone forever. The stakes weren't just our lives. They were Jake's ability to trust adults, to feel safe in his own home, to believe that family meant protection instead of exploitation. Everything depended on the next few hours, and on whether I'd finally listened to the son who'd been trying to warned me for weeks. The morning of January 22nd started with Stephanie's performance of the perfect wife going on a business trip. Conference materials all packed, she announced, moving through our bedroom with practiced efficiency. She laid out her professional blazer, stacked printed documents on the dresser, checked her rolling suitcase one final time. Everything looked legitimate and organized. I was getting dressed for work, half listening to her checklist. Which company is hosting this conference again? Pacific Northwest Real Estate Development Group, she said without missing a beat. 3 days of investment strategy seminars, residential and commercial property management. But Jake was standing in the doorway, watching her with that careful attention he'd developed over recent months. Something in his expression made me look closer at Stephanie's preparations. What kind of sessions are you most excited about? Jake asked. Stephanie paused for just a moment. Market analysis workshops, understanding regional investment opportunities. What time does it start tomorrow? 9 a.m. sharp, full day of presentations. Jake nodded thoughtfully. Can I see the schedule? What? The conference agenda. I'm doing a report on business careers for school. Stephanie's smile looked slightly strained. Honey, it's very technical adult stuff. You probably wouldn't understand most of it. Dad explains technical car stuff to me all the time, Jake pressed. I like learning about different businesses. Maybe when you're older. She zipped her suitcase with more force than necessary. Right now, let's focus on getting Daddy's breakfast ready. That evening, while Stephanie took her usual phone call in the home office, Jake approached me in the garage. I was organizing tools after a long day of brake repairs and transmission work. Dad, can I ask you something important? Always, buddy. What's on your mind? What's the name of Mom Stephanie's real estate company? The question surprised me. I'm not sure exactly. Why do you ask? She talks about work all the time, but I've never seen business cards or company signs or anything like that. He was right. In 2 years of marriage, I'd never seen any tangible evidence of Stephanie's supposed real estate career. No client phone calls at home, no work documents, no industry events or networking meetings. Different people work differently, I said, but doubt was beginning to form. Some businesses are more behind the scenes. Jake moved closer, lowering his voice. Dad, I looked up that conference. What do you mean? On the school computer, I searched for real estate conferences in Seattle this week. My hands stopped moving on the wrench I was holding. And? There aren't any. Not this week. I checked every major hotel, every convention center, every real estate organization website. The garage suddenly felt colder. Maybe it's a smaller private event. I checked everything, Dad. There's no Pacific Northwest Real Estate Development Group. There's no conference anywhere in Seattle this week that matches what she described. That night, after Stephanie fell asleep, I did my own research. Jake's thoroughness was extraordinary for an 11-year-old, but I needed to verify his findings. He was completely right. No real estate conferences in Seattle that week. No company called Pacific Northwest Real Estate Development Group anywhere online. No hotel group bookings that matched Stephanie's description. When I tried to check our joint credit card account to see her actual travel arrangements, I discovered she'd changed all the passwords without telling me. I lay awake next to someone who just lied directly to my face, watching her sleep peacefully while planning something I couldn't yet comprehend. The next morning, I made a decision that probably saved our lives. I'll drive you to the airport, I announced over breakfast. That's really not necessary, Stephanie said quickly. Derek said he could drop me off. Derek. Her supposed contractor friend who'd been helping with house projects that never seemed to get completed. I want to, I insisted. It's what husbands do. Something flickered in her eyes. Jake has school. Teacher work day, Jake said immediately. No classes today. Stephanie's perfect composure showed the first crack. Honestly, it's too much trouble for both of you. No trouble at all, I said, picking up my keys. Family sees family off properly. The drive to Austin Bergstrom Airport was tense. Stephanie checked her phone constantly, typing messages I couldn't see. Jake sat quietly in the back seat, but I could feel his alertness. As we pulled into the departure area, Jake spoke up. Dad, can I talk to you for a minute, privately? That's when everything changed. That's when my son saved both our lives. Jake had been preparing for this confrontation longer than anyone realized. For 3 weeks, he'd been operating his own investigation with the methodical attention that only children bring to things that don't make sense. While I was choosing to trust Stephanie's explanations, Jake was quietly documenting evidence that something was fundamentally wrong. It started with his phone, not for games or social media, but as a recording device. He'd discovered the voice memo app during a school technology class and realized it could capture conversations from anywhere in the house if positioned correctly. Dad taught me that evidence matters, he would later explain to Detective Mitchell. When customers argue about what's wrong with their cars, Dad always says you need proof of what really happened. The first recording happened 3 weeks before the airport confrontation. Jake was supposed to be asleep, but he'd heard Stephanie's voice through the thin walls of our ranch-style house. She was in the kitchen, speaking more intensely than he'd ever heard before. He grabbed his phone and hit record. "Tuesday night works perfectly," Stephanie was saying to someone. "They're always home by 9:30, like clockwork." Jake didn't understand the context, but something in her tone made him keep the recording running for the entire 12-minute conversation. "The timing has to be precise," she continued. "Both of them in the house, following their normal routine. It needs to look completely natural." Over the next 3 weeks, Jake captured fragments of 5 more phone calls, pieces of conversations about insurance payouts, cleaning up loose ends, and finally being free to start fresh. He began noticing other inconsistencies around the house that I'd been missing. There was Derek Patterson's business card, which Jake found while looking for gum in Stephanie's purse. "Professional home services," it read. But Derek never seemed to actually fix anything. He'd come to the house during my work hours, stay for several hours, and leave without completing any visible repairs or improvements. Jake started timing these visits. Derek came every Tuesday and Friday, always when I was at the shop, always staying between 2 and 4 hours. But our house showed no signs of ongoing maintenance work. There were also the insurance documents Jake discovered while searching for school supplies in Stephanie's home office. Policies with both our names, signatures that looked like mine but seemed slightly different when he compared them to my actual handwriting on permission slips and homework notes. Most importantly, there was Detective Sarah Mitchell's business card, which Jake had memorized from my wallet. Sarah and I had attended high school together. She'd given me her card at a class reunion 18 months earlier, saying to call if I ever needed law enforcement assistance. "Auto shops see all kinds of weird situations," she'd joked. "Sometimes you need someone who understands criminal behavior." Jake had written down her direct number weeks ago, though he wasn't sure when he might need it. The morning of January 22nd, he made decisions that demonstrated remarkable maturity and foresight. He charged his phone fully, cleared storage space for long recordings, and positioned it in his backpack for easy access. He also called Detective Mitchell from the school phone during lunch period. "This is Jake Robert," he'd said. "Brian Robert's son. I think my stepmom is planning to hurt me and my dad." Sarah had taken him seriously immediately. "What kind of evidence do you have, Jake?" "Recordings," he'd said. "Phone calls about insurance money and getting rid of problems." "Where are you going to be this afternoon?" "Taking my stepmom to the airport." "Jake, if you feel like you're in immediate danger, call 911 first. Then call me. Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am." When we arrived at Austin Airport, Jake had 43 minutes of recorded conversations, Detective Mitchell's direct number in his contacts, and a clear plan for what to do when the moment was right. My 11-year-old son was more prepared for what was coming than I was. Austin Bergstrom International Airport was bustling with the usual Tuesday afternoon crowds. Business travelers wheeling suitcases, families saying goodbye, college students returning to campus after winter break. Everyone around us was living normal lives, having normal conversations, dealing with ordinary travel stress. We weren't ordinary anymore. We just didn't all know it yet. Stephanie moved through Terminal B with the confidence of someone whose plan was unfolding exactly as designed. Her black rolling suitcase glided smoothly behind her, conference materials visible in the mesh pocket. Professional blazer, leather shoes, the perfect image of a successful real estate professional heading to an important industry event. Southwest Airlines, Gate B12, she announced, checking her boarding pass for the third time. Flight leaves at 5:45. Should give us plenty of time to check in and grab coffee. But I was beginning to notice things I'd previously overlooked. How Stephanie kept glancing at her phone, not for flight updates, but for text messages she'd immediately delete after reading. How she avoided making eye contact with airport staff or other travelers. How she seemed more focused on maintaining her performance than actually preparing to travel. Jake noticed everything. He stayed close to my side, his Star Wars backpack positioned so he could easily reach the front pocket where his phone had been recording since we left the house. At the Southwest check-in counter, Stephanie presented her identification and boarding pass with practiced ease. The gate agent processed her luggage tag, attached it to her suitcase, and sent it down the conveyor belt toward the plane. Conference in Seattle, she told the agent with her brightest smile. Real estate investment seminar. 3 days of learning new strategies for property development. The agent nodded politely, handed back her documents, wished her a productive trip. But as we walked toward the security checkpoint, Jake tugged on my jacket sleeve. Dad, I need to use the restroom. Can it wait until after we see Stephanie off? It's kind of urgent. His eyes held a significance I was just beginning to understand. Stephanie was already approaching the TSA line. You boys don't need to wait around, she called back. I know you have things to do at home. For the first time in months, I heard something different in her voice. Not affection or regret about leaving us for 3 days. Relief. She wanted us gone. Actually, let's sit down for a few minutes, I decided, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. We have time before your flight. I saw Stephanie's expression change. Just for a moment, the loving wife mask slipped, revealing something that looked almost like irritation, maybe even concern. Really, Brian, you don't need to wait. The conference materials are heavy, and I know you have work to catch up on at the shop. I want to spend a few more minutes with my wife before she travels, I insisted. We found seats near a coffee stand close to gate B15. Stephanie ordered a latte she barely touched. I got black coffee I didn't want. Jake asked for hot chocolate and positioned himself so he could watch Stephanie while appearing to play games on his phone. Tell me more about this conference, I said, sitting across from Stephanie in the small seating area. Investment strategies, she replied, stirring her untouched latte mechanically. Maximizing returns on residential property portfolios. Which specific company is hosting it? A brief pause. Pacific Northwest Development Corporation. I thought you said Pacific Northwest Real Estate Development Group yesterday. Another pause, longer this time. It's a partnership between multiple companies. They use different names for different events. Jake looked up from his phone. How many people are attending? What? The conference. Is it a big event or small workshop? Stephanie's smile looked increasingly artificial. Medium-sized. About 200 attendees. That's cool, Jake said casually. What hotel are they using for a group that size? The Marriott, downtown. Which Marriott? Jake pressed. Seattle has like 5 different Marriott hotels. I watched Stephanie's jaw tighten slightly. The one near the convention center. Jake nodded thoughtfully. Is that the one on Pike Street or the one near the waterfront? Jake, these are very detailed adult questions, Stephanie said, her voice carrying an edge I'd never heard before. I don't think you need to know every specific detail about my business travel. I'm just interested, Jake said innocently. Dad always explains his work to me. I like learning about different businesses. Well, real estate is much more complicated than auto repair. The comment hung in the air. Not just dismissive of Jake's curiosity, but insulting toward my career, my intelligence, my ability to understand complex business concepts. I think Jake's questions are reasonable, I said quietly. If you're going to be gone for 3 days, it makes sense that we'd want to know where you'll be. Stephanie looked at me with something approaching hostility. Since when do you question my travel arrangements? Since my son started asking good questions that you're avoiding. That's when her phone buzzed with an incoming call. She answered immediately without checking the caller ID. We have a problem, she said in a low voice, assuming we couldn't hear. They're not leaving the airport. She paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. I don't know. The kid keeps asking questions. Brian's acting suspicious. Another pause. No, stick to the timeline. I'll handle this. She ended the call and looked back at us with her practiced smile firmly back in place. Work call, she explained. Conference organizers confirming logistics. But Jake had heard everything, and in that moment, I watched my 11-year-old son make the decision that would save both our lives. Dad, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, can I talk to you privately? It's really important. Stephanie started to object. We should probably head toward security. Lines can be long on Tuesday afternoons. 2 minutes, I said, standing up and following Jake toward a quieter corner near the window. As we walked away, I heard Stephanie's phone ring again. She answered with obvious stress in her voice. They're not cooperating, she said. What do you want me to do? That's when Jake pulled out his phone. That's when he played me the first 10 seconds of a recording that would change everything we thought we knew about our family. Stephanie's voice, cold and calculating. Tuesday night, 9:30 exactly. Both of them home from dinner. Derek, you know what you need to do. The world shifted beneath my feet. Jake's phone screen displayed 43 minutes and 11 seconds of recorded audio. Dad, I've been recording her phone calls for 3 weeks, he whispered, his young voice steady despite the enormous weight of what he was revealing. She's been planning to hurt us. My hands trembled as I took his phone and the small earbuds he handed me. Even through the airport noise, Stephanie's voice came through with crystal clarity. The gas line modification will look completely natural, she was saying to someone with a rough, familiar voice. Old house, aging infrastructure. These accidents happen more often than people realize. What about the kid? The male voice asked. I recognized it now as Derek Patterson. Both of them have to be eliminated. The insurance policies only pay full benefits if both beneficiaries are deceased. I pulled out the earbuds, staring at my son in shock. When did you record this? Last Tuesday night. She thought I was asleep, but I heard her talking in the kitchen. Jake's 11-year-old eyes looked far too old for his face. Dad, she's been planning this for months. I looked back toward our seating area where Stephanie was still on her phone, still coordinating with Derek, still fine-tuning their plan to end our lives for insurance money. There's more, Jake said. Listen to this part. He fast-forwarded to a section recorded just 4 days earlier. Insurance investigations are thorough, Stephanie's voice explained with professional detachment. That's why my alibi needs to be absolutely perfect. Hotel receipts, conference photos, documented presence in Seattle. I'll be 1,500 miles away when the accident occurs. Derek's response made my stomach turn. And if the old man gets suspicious before Tuesday night? He won't. Brian trusts everyone completely. It's actually pathetic how gullible he is. Some people are just too naive to survive in this world. Their shared laughter felt like ice water in my veins. I stood there in Austin Airport, surrounded by ordinary travelers living ordinary lives, holding evidence that my wife had been planning to murder my son and me. The normalcy around us felt surreal and distant. Jake, we need to call Detective Mitchell right now. I already did, he said quietly. 30 minutes ago when we were walking from the parking garage. What? I called Detective Mitchell from the restroom while you were getting coffee. Told her we were at the airport, and I had recordings of a murder plot being planned. She said she was sending airport police immediately. My 11-year-old son had been thinking 3 steps ahead of everyone else involved. How long before they arrive? She said 15 minutes. That was 25 minutes ago. As if responding to his words, I spotted 2 uniformed airport police officers entering our terminal area, scanning the crowd methodically. Jake raised his hands slightly, and they began walking toward us. Mr. Robert? The older officer, his badge reading Sergeant Martinez, approached with professional calm. Your son contacted us about a potential threat situation. My wife is planning to kill us, I said, the words feeling impossible even as I spoke them. My son has recorded evidence of the conspiracy. Sergeant Martinez looked skeptical until Jake handed over his phone and played the key sections of Stephanie's conversations. I watched the officer's expression transform from doubt to alarm to grim determination. Ma'am, Martinez called to Stephanie, who was still at our original seating area, still coordinating on her phone. Could you join us over here, please? Stephanie looked up, saw the uniform, saw Jake and me standing together with the officers. For just a moment, her carefully maintained composure cracked completely. Panic flashed across her face before she reconstructed her smile. Of course, she said, walking over with her rolling suitcase. Is there some kind of problem? We need to discuss your travel plans, Martinez said. Certainly, I'm flying to Seattle for a real estate investment conference. She presented her boarding pass as supporting evidence. What's the specific name of this conference? I asked. Pacific Northwest Real Estate Investment Summit. Martinez looked at me questioningly. I shook my head. Ma'am, our preliminary investigation indicates no such conference exists this week in Seattle, Martinez said. Stephanie's smile wavered slightly. There must be some confusion. It's a smaller, specialized industry event. Organized by which company? Pacific Northwest Development Corporation. Martinez nodded to his partner, who immediately got on his radio to verify the information. Mrs. Robert, we'd like you to listen to something, Martinez said, holding Jake's phone. What happened next was the complete disintegration of 2 years of carefully constructed lies. As Stephanie's own voice played back her conversations with Derek, planning our deaths, calculating insurance payouts, discussing the precise timing for a tragic household accident, her face went through a series of revealing transformations. First, genuine confusion. How could they possibly have recordings of her private conversations? Then rapid calculation. How could she explain this evidence away? Finally, cold acceptance mixed with barely contained rage. The game was over, and she knew it. Those recordings were obtained illegally, she said, her voice now completely different. Hard, professional, calculating. The loving stepmother performance was finished. Recorded without my knowledge or consent in my own home. Actually, Martinez explained, Texas is a one-party consent state for recording conversations. Jake had every legal right to record conversations he was present for or could overhear from common areas of the house. Other travelers were beginning to notice the developing situation. A small crowd was forming at a respectful distance, phones discreetly recording the drama unfolding near Gate B-15. Furthermore, Martinez continued, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and criminal solicitation. That's when Stephanie finally dropped all pretense. You have no idea what you're interfering with, she snarled at me, her voice filled with venom I'd never heard before. Brian, you pathetic fool. Do you realize how much debt you're carrying? How close to financial ruin you actually are? I was going to solve all your problems and make us wealthy. By murdering my son. By eliminating obstacles to our financial success. Jake isn't even your biological child anyway. The lie came so smoothly, so viciously calculated to cause maximum emotional damage, that Jake actually stepped backward. Yes, he is, I said firmly, and even if he wasn't, he's my son. Martinez was placing handcuffs on Stephanie now, reading her Miranda rights while she continued her verbal assault. You'll never survive without me, she spat. You're nothing but a small-town mechanic with no vision and no business sense. I was your only chance at a better life. My better life is keeping my son alive. As they began escorting her toward airport security detention, she turned back one final time. Derek's probably already at the house, she called out with deliberate cruelty. Even if you arrest me, the plan might already be in motion. Martinez immediately radioed Round Rock Police and Fire Department for emergency response to our address. Possible explosive device. Code red priority. Jake grabbed my hand as we watched Stephanie disappear into the secure area of the airport. Dad, are we really safe now? We're safe, I said, though I wasn't entirely certain that was true yet. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe properly. The woman who'd been planning our deaths was in police custody. The son who'd saved our lives was standing beside me, brave and alert and whole. The truth was finally exposed. Justice was beginning. Within 45 minutes, Austin Airport had become the command center for a multi-jurisdiction criminal investigation. Detective Sarah Mitchell arrived with backup officers, digital forensics equipment, and 22 years of experience investigating financial crimes. She established a temporary operations center in an unused gate area while Sergeant Martinez coordinated emergency response with Round Rock authorities. Jake, you've done extraordinary police work, Sarah told my son as she began uploading his recordings to evidence servers. This level of investigative thinking and evidence collection is remarkable for anyone, let alone someone your age. But our immediate crisis was Derek Patterson, somewhere in Round Rock, potentially armed, definitely dangerous, and possibly in the final stages of preparing an explosive device at our home. Round Rock Police, Fire Department, and Bomb Squad are all en route, Martinez reported. Your neighborhood is being evacuated as a precautionary measure. We're treating this as an active threat situation. Through the airport's floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched planes taxi and take off while my life unfolded like scenes from a crime thriller. Other passengers maintained respectful distance, but I could sense their curiosity and concern. Several were still discreetly recording the ongoing investigation on their phones. Sarah's laptop displayed a rapidly expanding digital investigation. Bank records, insurance policies, phone logs, email accounts, social media activity, all being analyzed in real time by forensic specialists. Brian, look at this pattern, she said, turning her screen toward me. Our joint bank statements showed financial activity I'd completely missed. For 9 months, small but consistent amounts had been transferred from our account to something called Patterson Professional Services. $300 here, $500 there, always with legitimate sounding explanations. Gas line safety inspection, electrical system evaluation, foundation stability assessment, HVAC maintenance consultation, all fabricated, all payments to Derek for services that were actually planning sessions for our execution. Total payments over 9 months, Sarah calculated, $4,200. She was literally paying for your own assassination with your own money. Yet, and the insurance documentation was even more damning. My supposed signature on Jake's life insurance policy was obviously forged. The handwriting analysis would be conclusive evidence. The timeline showed meticulous planning. Stephanie had systematically increased my coverage and added Jake's policy within specific timeframes, establishing clear financial motive months in advance. But the most chilling evidence was contained in Stephanie's text message history. Sarah scrolled through hundreds of exchanges between Stephanie and Derek. The evolution from casual complaints about family life to detailed murder planning was documented step by step in their own words. August 22nd, 2020. 3. Stephanie. I can't keep pretending to enjoy this boring suburban life. Brian works constantly, and that kid isn't even mine. Derek. So leave him. Stephanie. And get nothing after 2 years of investment? There has to be a more profitable exit strategy. September 7th, 2020. 3. Telepai. What if accidents happen to both of them? Natural gas explosions occur frequently in older homes. Stephanie. Accidental death pays double on most life insurance policies. October 15th, 2020. 23. Stephanie. Research the insurance situation. Total payout would be $2.1 million, plus house equity, business assets, and other holdings. We're looking at approximately $3.2 million total. Derek. Definitely worth the operational risk. The messages continued chronologically, documenting the progression from fantasy to concrete operational planning, methods discussion, timeline establishment, alibi creation, evidence disposal strategies, all preserved in digital evidence that would be admissible in court. This isn't impulsive or emotional, Sarah explained. This is calculated, premeditated conspiracy with substantial financial motivation. Texas prosecutors take this type of case very seriously. My phone rang with an incoming call from Round Rock Police. Mr. Robert, this is Captain Rodriguez. We're currently at your residence. Derek Patterson has been taken into custody while attempting to complete modifications to your home's gas line system. Relief flooded through me like warm water. Is he talking? Very much so. And Mr. Robert, I need to tell you something important. Your son's actions absolutely saved your lives. The gas line had been professionally modified to create a massive explosion triggered by any electrical switch activation. If you'd returned home tonight and turned on the garage lights, he didn't need to complete the sentence. I understood the implications. We're also discovering additional evidence throughout your property. Professional tools, communication devices, detailed written instructions. Patterson had very specific plans for staging the scene after the explosion to ensure it appeared completely accidental. How professional are we talking? Very professional. Derek Patterson has prior convictions for insurance fraud in Oklahoma and Louisiana. This isn't his first murder for money operation. Sarah was nodding as she pulled up Derek's criminal history on her laptop. 2 previous cases, 2018 and 2021, both involved targeting financially stable men through romantic partners who served as inside coordinators. The operational pattern was becoming clear. Stephanie hadn't randomly encountered Derek. She'd deliberately sought out someone with specific experience in exactly this type of crime. Brian, Sarah continued, we've discovered that Stephanie Miller isn't her real name. Her actual legal name is Sandra Christine Miller. She has outstanding warrants in 4 states for fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and suspected involvement in at least 3 suspicious deaths. The woman I'd married, the person I'd trusted with my son's safety and our family's future, was a career criminal specializing in murdering families for financial gain. How many other families has she targeted? We're still investigating, but preliminary evidence suggests at least 6 cases over 8 years. Different states, different false identities, identical operational methods. Target widowed or divorced men with children and substantial assets. Establish romantic relationships quickly. Arrange insurance policies. Stage fatal accidents. How many people has she killed? Sarah's expression was grimly serious. We may never know the complete count, but we believe the number is significant. By 7:15 p.m., the situation was fully contained. Derek Patterson was in Round Rock County Jail facing charges of attempted murder, conspiracy, criminal mischief, possession of explosive materials, and violation of parole from his previous convictions. Stephanie, Sandra, was being held in Travis County detention on multiple felony counts, including conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, identity theft, and organized criminal activity. Federal charges will follow, Sarah explained. Wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy across state lines, racketeering. This case is going to involve multiple federal agencies. Local news crews had arrived at the airport. The story was already spreading across social media platforms. Child's recording exposes stepmother's murder plot. 11-year-old hero prevents family assassination. Insurance fraud conspiracy. Stopped by elementary student. Jake handled the media attention with remarkable composure and thoughtfulness. I just did what my dad taught me about paying attention to evidence, he told a reporter from KVUE News. When something doesn't make sense, you investigate. When people you love are in danger, you protect them. When asked if he'd been scared, Jake's response surprised everyone. I was scared for my dad, not scared of her. Once I understood what she really was, she couldn't hurt us anymore. Truth is stronger than lies. And that evening we stayed at a hotel near the airport while crime scene investigators completed their work at our house. Round Rock Fire Department had declared it safe after removing Derek's equipment and repairing the gas line modifications, but we needed time to process everything that had occurred. Dad, Jake said as we ordered room service dinner, are you going to be okay? The question caught me off guard. After everything he'd endured, after the courage he'd shown, after literally saving our lives, he was concerned about my emotional well-being. I'm grateful, I said honestly. Grateful you were brave enough to investigate when something felt wrong. Grateful you trusted your instincts when I was ignoring mine. Grateful you spoke up when it mattered most. I was worried you might not believe me. Jake, from this moment forward, if you tell me something feels wrong, I listen. No questions, no hesitation, no dismissal. You've proven that your judgment is better than mine. He smiled, the first genuinely relaxed expression I'd seen from him in months. So we're really safe now? We're really safe now. As we waited for our food, I reflected on the broader implications of this day. 2 dangerous criminals removed from society, a murder conspiracy exposed before it could claim victims. multiple law enforcement agencies investigating similar cases in other jurisdictions, potentially solving cold cases and preventing future crimes. But the most important victory was simpler. My son felt secure again. The nightmares, the constant vigilance, the underlying anxiety, all of it finally made complete sense. He hadn't been overreacting to normal family adjustments. He'd been detecting genuine danger that I was too trusting to recognize. Jake, can I ask you something? Sure, Dad. How long have you suspected she was dangerous? He considered the question carefully. Not suspected exactly, but something felt wrong almost from the beginning. She was nice to you, but different when you weren't watching. Like she was performing instead of being real. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I tried. Remember the nightmares? When I said I felt unsafe? When I started staying close to you all the time? He was absolutely right. He had been trying to communicate his concerns. I just hadn't been listening carefully enough. I'm sorry I didn't hear you properly. It's okay, Dad. You hear me now. Yes, I heard him now, and I always would. The aftermath unfolded with the precision of a complex legal case building momentum. Within 72 hours, Detective Sarah Mitchell had connected Sandra Christine Miller to 6 similar cases across 4 states. The operational pattern was always identical. Target vulnerable single fathers with assets, establish trust through romance and apparent domestic stability, secure large insurance policies, stage accidents to collect substantial payouts. The Oklahoma case from 2020, Sarah explained during a comprehensive briefing at Round Rock Police Station, involved a widowed construction contractor and his 2 teenage sons. House fire, made to appear electrical in origin. All 3 victims died. Sandra collected $1.6 million in life insurance proceeds and disappeared completely. She presented newspaper clippings from that investigation. The photographs made my stomach contract. Michael Torres, 47, and his sons David, 16, and Carlos, 14. Their destroyed home. Sandra, using the identity Patricia Williams then, portrayed as the devastated girlfriend at their memorial service. Louisiana in 2018 followed the same pattern. Single father, 1 daughter. Carbon monoxide poisoning from a supposedly malfunctioning furnace. Sandra was establishing an alibi in another state when it occurred. 1.4 million payout. 4 families, 11 people total, all eliminated so Sandra could restart with new money and new identities. We're reopening all these cases as homicide investigations, Sarah continued. Jake's recordings have provided the breakthrough evidence we needed to connect them definitively. The legal proceedings advanced rapidly. Derek Patterson, confronted with overwhelming physical evidence and digital communications, accepted a plea agreement. 30 years for conspiracy to commit murder, with additional consecutive sentences for insurance fraud and weapons violations. His cooperation in providing detailed testimony about Sandra's operation helped him avoid capital punishment. Sandra refused all plea negotiations. She maintained complete innocence despite mounting evidence. Forged documentation, false identities across multiple states, bank accounts containing proceeds from previous accidents, detailed operational planning documents discovered in storage facilities in Dallas and Houston. She demonstrates classic psychopathic traits, explained the lead prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Rebecca Chen, during our pre-trial consultation. Complete absence of empathy or remorse, purely transactional view of human relationships, sophisticated manipulation capabilities. The trial lasted 8 weeks. Jake's recording was the foundational element of the prosecution's case, but investigators had assembled comprehensive additional evidence. Financial records spanning multiple states, forensic evidence from previous crime scenes, witness testimony from Sandra's previous false identities. Jake testified for 45 minutes. The judge had cleared the courtroom of media to protect his privacy, but his testimony was devastating in its clarity and factual precision. She discussed killing me and my dad like she was planning a vacation, he told the jury. Everything was about money and timing and making sure nobody would suspect it wasn't an accident. Sandra was convicted on all charges. 9 counts of first-degree murder, multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft across multiple jurisdictions. Judge Patricia Morrison sentenced her to life without possibility of parole, plus consecutive terms totaling 215 additional years. "You represent a particular type of evil," Judge Morrison stated at sentencing, "the calculated exploitation and elimination of families seeking love and stability. One child's courage has ended a criminal enterprise that might have continued indefinitely." But the consequences extended beyond criminal justice. Insurance companies launched comprehensive investigations into Sandra's activities. Mutual Benefit Life, which had issued policies for the Oklahoma and Louisiana murders, discovered evidence of systematic fraud extending back over a decade. Total fraudulent payouts Sandra had collected over $12 million. She wasn't just committing isolated murders, the lead insurance investigator explained. She was operating a sophisticated criminal organization with multiple identities, professional documentation capabilities, and systematic execution methods. They recovered approximately $9 million from various accounts Sandra had maintained. The remaining assets, plus proceeds from asset forfeiture after her conviction, were distributed to victims' families as partial restitution. Our personal financial recovery was straightforward. All insurance policies Sandra had fraudulently obtained were voided and rescinded. Our joint accounts, frozen during the investigation, were released when we demonstrated no knowledge of criminal activities. The house, which had been placed in joint ownership, reverted to my sole possession. Most importantly, Jake's college fund, money his mother Sarah had designated specifically for his education, was protected and restored to his name exclusively. The social consequences proved more complex and far-reaching. Our story achieved national media coverage within 10 days. 11-year-old hero stops serial killer, child's iPhone recording breaks multi-state murder ring, Texas boy's courage saves lives, solves cold cases. Jake appeared on Good Morning America, Today Show, and Anderson Cooper 360. He handled the attention with extraordinary maturity, consistently focusing on the importance of evidence and trusting children's observations. "Kids should always trust their instincts about adults," he told Anderson Cooper. "If something feels wrong, keep asking questions until someone listens and believes you." The media attention generated unexpected benefits. 7 additional potential victims contacted law enforcement after recognizing Sandra's photograph or operational methods. Men who had been approached by women matching her patterns, who had sensed something problematic but hadn't acted on their suspicions. "You probably prevented more deaths than you'll ever know," Detective Mitchell told Jake 6 months later during a follow-up interview. "My auto repair business experienced dramatic growth. Hero Dad's Honest Auto Service became our unofficial local designation. Customer volume tripled as people drove from Austin specifically to meet Jake, to express their admiration for his courage, to support our family. I hired 4 additional mechanics and expanded to a larger facility with modern equipment. Jake, now 12, assists with customer relations after school, carrying himself with the quiet confidence of someone who understands he can handle serious challenges. The nightmares stopped completely, both his and mine. Perhaps the most significant long-term consequence was the transformation of our relationship. The trust between us, tested by Sandra's manipulation but ultimately proven unbreakable, became the foundation for everything else in our lives. "Dad, I've decided something important," Jake announced one evening about 8 months after the trial. My first reaction was still a momentary spike of concern. Certain phrases would probably trigger protective instincts for years. "What's that, buddy?" "I want to become a detective, like Detective Mitchell." "That's an excellent choice. You've already demonstrated you have the skills for it." "I want to help other kids who notice things adults miss. Kids whose families might be in danger but don't realize it yet." Detective Mitchell, who had become an informal mentor to Jake, enthusiastically supported his career interest. "He possesses natural investigative instincts," she explained, "observational capabilities, attention to detail, ability to remain calm under extreme pressure. Plus, he understands criminal psychology because he's already confronted genuine evil and prevailed. Jake began participating in junior police academy programs on weekends, studying forensic science online, learning about law enforcement procedures, criminal behavior analysis, evidence collection, and preservation. At 12 years old, he demonstrated better deception detection abilities than most trained adults. The problem with bad people, he observed recently, is they always think they're smarter than everyone else. That's their weakness. They underestimate regular people, especially kids. Sandra Miller had indeed underestimated regular people. She'd underestimated a single father's capacity for love and protection. Most critically, she'd underestimated an 11-year-old's ability to see through sophisticated lies and take decisive action when adults failed to recognize danger. That underestimation cost her everything and saved lives she'd planned to eliminate. Justice prevailed. Families were protected. Truth conquered deception. But the most important consequence was the simplest. Jake and I were still alive to witness it all. 18 months later, life has been rebuilt on a foundation of genuine trust and authentic communication. We still live in the same house in Round Rock, but everything about it feels different now. The tension that had gradually infected every room is gone. No more whispered phone calls behind closed doors. No more performed conversations for hidden audiences. No more pretending normalcy when something fundamental felt wrong. Jake is now 13, more confident and self-assured, but also more discerning about who deserves his trust. He's learned to distinguish between healthy caution and paralyzing fear, between being appropriately careful and being chronically anxious. I don't hate her anymore, he told me recently, demonstrating emotional maturity that continues to amaze me. I feel sorry for her. She never learned how to love people for real, so she could only see them as problems to solve or things to use. My auto repair business has grown beyond anything I'd imagined possible. Word spread that the hero dad was also a mechanic who stood behind his work and treated customers with genuine respect. But more than that, people trust us because they've seen evidence that when situations become truly serious, we make the right choices. We've had thoughtful conversations about the possibility of dating again, about potentially expanding our family in the future. But we've also established new protocols and boundaries. Anyone I develop serious interest in will be thoroughly investigated by both of us. Background checks aren't romantic, but they're significantly safer than blind trust. Jake has explicit veto authority over anyone who might become part of our family structure. Not because kids should make adult relationship decisions, I explained to him, but because you observe things I miss. You detect patterns I ignore. He nodded with serious understanding, like getting a second opinion. Doctors do that for important diagnoses. Exactly like seeking a second opinion. The financial recovery exceeded our most optimistic projections. Between increased business revenue, insurance restitution payments, and income from a book deal, about our experience, Jake's educational fund is now secure through graduate school. He's discussing studying criminology at the University of Texas, then potentially joining the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. Detective Mitchell believes he'd excel in federal law enforcement. Most investigators learn to recognize deception through extensive training and field experience, she explained. Jake learned it through necessity at age 11. That's an extremely rare skill foundation. But financial security and career prospects aren't the true measures of our recovery. The real measure exists in smaller, daily moments. Like Jake falling asleep easily in his own bedroom, no longer concerned about who might be moving through the house after dark. Like family dinners where conversation flows naturally, without anyone performing scripted roles for concealed purposes. Like planning weekend trips without wondering if someone is calculating the insurance implications of our temporary absence. Like Jake bringing friends home after school, confident that our house represents genuine safety. Most importantly, we've learned that protecting each other extends far beyond physical security. It includes maintaining the trust that allows honest communication when something feels problematic. "Dad, I need to tell you something," is no longer a phrase that generates dread. It's become standard family communication. Jake shares concerns about school situations, friend dynamics, choices he's considering. I share business challenges, decisions about our future, questions about effective parenting. We've discovered that secrets create danger in families, that intuitive feelings deserve serious respect, that children's perspectives are often clearer than adult assumptions clouded by wishful thinking. 4 months ago, Jake came home with concerns about a classmate whose new stepfather was acting strange. Instead of dismissing it as typical adolescent drama, we investigated carefully, called the friend's mother, asked respectful but probing questions. The stepfather was stealing money from family accounts and had developed a serious gambling addiction. Not a murder conspiracy, but serious enough that early intervention prevented complete financial devastation. See, Jake said afterward, kids notice important stuff. Yes, they absolutely do. And from now on, I'm listening. The woman who attempted to destroy our family actually strengthened us. She forced us to develop skills we didn't know we needed, taught us lessons we wouldn't have learned otherwise. We're more careful now, but not more fearful. More skeptical, but not cynical. More protective, but not paranoid. And we're still here, still together, still building a life founded on trust that's been tested under extreme pressure and proven genuine. If you're watching this story, I have one essential piece of advice. Listen to the children in your life. Really listen. They observe the world with unfiltered perception, without the assumptions that make adults overlook obvious warning signs. Sometimes the smallest voice carries the most crucial truth. Where are you watching from? I'd love to know this reached you safely.